Hi. Hi.
Hi. Okay. How are you guys all doing? You're good?
Very
Good,
good.
thank you. How are
Good, thanks,
you?
Auntie. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. So you guys have promised to be gentle with us today.
We'll definitely try.
You try. Okay. I'm like, oh my gosh, should I be nervous? But you said you would try, so you will be gentle with us.
Yes.
So, folks, you will. Thank you, Ayo. Thank you. So, folks, can we do the usual hangout thing? Show them some love, hugs, just welcome them. Because this is their first time on Hangout Cafe. So, can we show them some love? Thank you, guys. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, 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 yes. You know, what they're doing is really brave of them, and I appreciate all of them to come and be vulnerable, even knowing that their aunties, uncles are here. But hey, guys, thank you, thank you, thank you. Don't say it as it is, okay? They've given you permission. Just say it as it is. Say it as it is. Okay. So I'm going to start out by just asking you guys to just introduce yourselves and just tell us a little bit about what you do. So, Ayon, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Ayo. I'm 23. I'll be turning 24 fairly shortly. And I work in finance. I work in asset management. And I graduated a number of years ago. And I'm excited that this might be one of the only opportunities we have to actually share the tea and be of more. So thank you for on. I'm excited.
Thank you, Ayo. Okay. Afope and Ife, you guys go on.
I'm Afope. I'm 25. I work in digital marketing and e-commerce, and I'm very excited to be on the Hangout Cafe today. I feel like I'm on Oprah or something. So I've been practicing, you know, my laugh and all of that stuff. So super excited.
Afope, you have just made my day. You have just made my day. Okay.
I'm Ife. I'm Afofe's younger sister. I'm 23 and I work as a software engineer at the moment.
Thank you. Are you excited to be on today?
Of course, so excited. I've been waiting for it all week.
And thank you. Ife was the one that designed the flyer. So thank you so much. Great job.
Anytime. If anyone has any graphic design needs, just message me afterwards.
Please. Yes, please. Go to her. And you pay. So it's not free. You pay her. Okay.
Hi, I'm Tubo. I'm the host's son. I'm nearly 25. I work in consulting, and yeah, I'm just excited to be here. Lots of thoughts, lots of things have been going through my mind, things I want to say. So I'm very ready.
Tubo, you know you live in this house with me.
I know.
Well done, guys. Well done. Okay. So, are you guys all ready for us?
Yes.
Let's go.
Let's go. Now, guys, again, please, if you've got questions for them, put the questions in the question box, not in the comment box, because it's easier for me to read the questions if the questions are in the question box. So, guys, as we're coming out of lockdown, can I ask how the experience has been for you guys? How have you coped? How have you coped?
Is that just in general or kind of living at home?
Anywhere, you can, any angle you want to.
Right. So I think I graduated in 2019, and so I moved back home end of 2019. 2020 we're in lockdown, and so I remember when I first moved back, and I was telling my friends it's not that bad. My dad was working abroad, my mum was just always traveling, so I felt like it was kind of just me and my sister living at home. And then we were in lockdown, and it just felt like we were just all on top of each other. You can't really have a call without an interruption. Even like us two, I think we kind of get on each other's nerves a bit more than we would, just because you can't really escape each other. I think as things open up, it's been a lot better. I will say I do appreciate my family more, just being around them as kind of a unit, having that as a support system. Not everyone has been able to have that. Like some people have been living alone, so I'm really grateful for that. But I think you definitely, as much as the good you see, you definitely see a lot of the bad as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'd say similar. Before the lockdown, like I think no one in my family, like I was barely in the house. My sister was barely in the house. My dad was always doing, everyone was always doing their own thing. And then the lockdown just forced us to actually like always be around each other, which has been good, to be honest. Like I think our family relationship has actually been strengthened a lot, by whether it's like cooking with each other or like just having more time to chat, not always just being on the move. I think that's definitely helped, but it has, from a personal note, it's been very difficult. Just everything just being in one space. I think originally I was working in my bedroom, which was extremely difficult because I get up and then take two steps and I'm at my desk, and that was just. But yeah, I think the the fact that we're emerging out of this has brought more hope. So yeah, it's been good.
Thank you. Thank you. Ayo?
Yeah, so if I was to describe it in one word, I would definitely say it's been a roller coaster journey. A lot of ups and a lot of downs. I think similar to what Tubo and Ife said, I think after graduating in 2018, coming home, I think because I was working, I was pretty much never really at home. I spent extended periods of time at home, so I was always out, whether it would be working or social events. And so I think for the first time, I think I was really in the house with my parents, and it'd been a while since that was the case. So it was definitely initially a shock to the system, and at times we definitely butt heads, as I guess parents and children generally do. But I think one thing I would say is it's definitely built a lot of patience actually, with how I spend my time or how I engage with my parents and just generally people. So whilst there's been a few benefits, working from home at times has been great. There's also been a few difficulties as well, but I guess that's just been the journey of this lockdown.
Thank you. So okay, let me ask you, what has been your biggest challenge during this lockdown, and how have you grown as a result of the challenge?
When Ayo just said now about patience, that really resonated with me because I am not a patient person. It's not my strong suit. At work, if someone's frustrating me, like I get easily irritated, especially, and at home, if I'm trying to do something, even if it's just cooking in the kitchen and someone else is there, I would rather cook at like midnight than cook when everyone's in the kitchen. So I think in this period, God has been really, really trying to make me a more patient person and also being less irritable. I think that sometimes I love my family, love being around people, but I do kind of value my kind of freedom and independence. And, having been at uni, having lived abroad, I've been fairly independent for the past couple of years. So I think in this lockdown, having my sister, my brother, my mum, my dad, who, as if I said, usually we're all over, in one space, it's been tough, but I've definitely, I think I've grown as a person, become more patient, trying to become more relatable, trying to be friends with my family as well, I think is a big one.
Yeah.
Because I think you take for granted your family sometimes. And my mum would always say to me that the same way you treat your friends is how you should treat your sister. Just because she's always there doesn't mean that you should kind of not give her the same grace that you give your friends. Yeah. So I think I've definitely, anyway, at least trying to become friends more with my sister, my brother, and even my parents as well. So I think, I've definitely grown a lot. I'm trying at least.
Does any other person want to share what their biggest challenge has been and how they've grown? Anything you can think of?
Well, I quit my job just before lockdown, around February 2020, and I think I had about 7 months of not working. I think it was the first time in my life that I didn't know what the next step was. Wow. And then I think that happening anyway is already a big thing, but that happening when the whole world doesn't look like it's just everything's array. I think it taught me just not to be so dependent on your circumstance. Like, I think during the time there were jobs that might have come up that I knew weren't right for me, and it was a big thing to kind of turn them down when jobs aren't coming up as frequently. But it taught me to just trust the process, trust God, and not settle and go for what you want, because I couldn't imagine the job I'm in now is completely different to what I was doing before. And I think had I just accepted the first thing that came up, I wouldn't be working at it now. So
Wow, fantastic. Yeah. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd say similar to Ifa actually. So I was on furlough for about 4 months during the pandemic, and it's so funny because I spent 4 months basically just worrying, being like, "Ah, am I gonna have a job? I'm like, what's gonna happen?" And then they brought me back, and I look back and I'm like, that was 4 months as a gift. Like I could have just been, my company was even topping up the extra 20% pay. So I was literally earning my full salary, but just not working. And I was just like, now that I think about it, that was just a gift from God to just rest, now even the way I've been tired lately. So I think it just taught me, I guess, just to trust God, like just to trust him in different seasons, because he's got you. And if he tells you to rest, take the rest.
Take the rest. Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
I would say for me, so I'm generally quite impatient and I like to kind of get things done at my own time. If I want something, I want it to be done really quickly. And so fairly similar to Ife in terms of I was in my current job and I was looking for a new role. And I think as someone who's quite quick and likes things to be done really quickly, I think in this period, I think God actually I think he humbled me because I really had to be patient. And trust that he had something planned and something planned for me. And there were so many offers that came up, or offers that I was received, and things fell through. And I think looking back holistically, or looking at it from in hindsight, I can definitely say again that I've definitely learned how to be a lot more patient and also trusting. Or I'm trying to be a lot more trusting in the process. So I think many times when you're in the process, it's really difficult to see how things are working. But it's only when you step back and look at it from an objective point of view that you actually see, hey, so this happened, this fell through for a reason, this works like this for a reason. And so I think this time has taught me to really kind of take a step back and try and be as patient as possible, despite the fact that it's quite difficult for someone like me who's always running and always trying to get to the next step.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you. It's glad to see that despite all the challenges, we've all grown, and you guys have grown despite all the challenges. Great. Okay. So obviously the isolation of the lockdown and our current culture of trial by social media has highlighted the importance of looking at our mental health, something which didn't really apply to my generation, to be honest, where we just had to tough it out during the bad times or try to figure things out. So what steps did you guys take as individuals to take care of your mental health?
I think recognizing when you're burning out is a key factor. I was also similar to Ife. I actually changed jobs as well in the pandemic. I was working in a job where I really enjoyed it. I had a very good rapport with my colleagues. I had made some best friends there. But because I liked the company so much, I was basically allowing them to take me for granted. And I was working till 3 a.m. some nights. And I'm working in marketing. I was like, I might as well become a lawyer with these hours and making lawyer money. But in marketing, it didn't make any sense. I was working till 3 a.m. I was having to actually take back holidays. They would ask me, oh, hey, I know you've got this day off, but actually, can you work, because we need to get the work done. Right. And because we're in a pandemic, I just kind of thought, I'm very grateful to have a job, so let me just keep doing this. And it got to the point where I literally I had a breakdown, and I was like, I physically can't do this anymore. And God really helped me out, to be honest, because I didn't know how. I didn't really see a way out. And by God's grace, like I managed to actually get a new role quite shortly after, I guess, I had that breakdown.
Right.
And it was like a real blessing because it was a role that was like more senior, more pay. It was just an all-round better job. And I think now, to just try and avoid kind of getting to that point where I'm breaking down, just really being strict with myself, being disciplined.
Right.
So I'm not going to work certain hours. Like we always say in my job, like we're not saving lives. And while my work is very important to me, it's really, really important that I kind of also balance that with extracurricular stuff. So I have a podcast, for example. So I always try and focus on, okay, this week I'm going to be doing this for my podcast, or I'm going to go to the gym, or I'm gonna log off at 5 p.m. It doesn't matter. I don't really care if someone messages me at 4:59 to do some work. I'm going to be strict with myself and go to the gym, because I don't want to get to the point where I literally have a breakdown before I prioritize my mental health. So yeah, for me, it's easier said than done to be disciplined, but for me, I really have to plan my time strategically to avoid, I guess, having a breakdown and burning out, because it's really in the long run it's not worth it.
It's not.
So yeah, for me that's probably.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Afope. Thank you. Anyone else wants to share?
Yeah, I think Afope pretty much hit the nail on the head. I think the balance is incredibly important. And one thing I would add to that as well is something I've talked to my friends about quite a lot is therapy and counseling. So I think many times in our community, we don't necessarily cultivate an environment where we can actually have candid conversations. And so finding someone or somewhere where you can actually be quite frank, ask yourself the difficult questions and speak to someone on a regular basis, I think is incredibly important. And I think just having that outlet means, one, you can almost self-reflect, figure out where you are in terms of, am I burnt out? Am I kind of doing too much? How do I need to act? I think that's so incredibly important, particularly during the lockdown where it felt like we were all isolated, despite the fact that we were on Zoom meetings for hours and hours on end, Zoom meetings from morning to night, Saturday and Sunday. You felt like you were still with people, but at the same time, it felt as though you weren't necessarily able to have these conversations with your friends like you usually would. So I think speaking to people, whether that be through therapy or counseling or your mentors, I think is incredibly important. And the second thing I would add to that as well is, I guess, balancing your time and doing something outside of work, I guess. So extracurricular, whatever it is that kind of just keeps your mind off of work, whether that's going to the gym. I recently picked up piano lessons again. And I think just having that time where I finish work, I log off, or I know that my lesson's at this time and I kind of have to prepare. And I guess just having that time with that balance has really meant that I keep, I would say, relatively stable, not 100%, but relatively. So yeah, those are the two things for me.
Thank you, Ayo. No, that's it's so important. Self-care, as someone just said, self-care is so important. Okay, anyone? In fact, there was something you touched on, which was going to be my next question. That who do you turn to when you're going through challenges or difficulties? When you're going through your periods of deepest difficulties? So, you anyone that wants to answer, we can touch on
I'll
the
jump
previous
on
question,
there.
and then yeah.
As Ayo mentioned, well, therapy. So I started therapy, I think in August last year. Kind of just because I kind of reached that point where I was just like, look, there's a lot going on with me, especially internally, and I think the pandemic just doesn't help at all. Like everything is just ticking over, ticking over, ticking over. And I just needed that space. So that's something I started. And honestly, that's been an incredible space for me. Like the way I look forward to it is just incredible, because I don't know, it's someone who I'm speaking to, who there's no like ulterior motive or other interest. Like I think even though with your friends, really, or your parents or your family members, whatever, you should be able to speak to them freely. But often the way our minds play these tricks is, oh, what are they going to say when you say this? How are they going to react when you present this? If you say that you're feeling this way, are they going to react in the right way? But a therapist is someone who's trained to just sit and listen, someone who's trained to respond someone who's trained to study the way that you are and respond in a way that's best for you. So that's been, yeah, for me, like if I hadn't started therapy, I don't know what the past year would have been like, because it just gave me a release personally.
Okay, guys, can I ask you to speak into that? Because a lot of parents, when you say you want, I want to see a therapist, they're like, what's the matter with you? There's nothing wrong with you. So can you guys just explain to us parents that seeing a therapist is not a big deal like that? Can anyone share on that?
I think that it's funny how people will say that with a therapist, but if someone had a cut, for example, and wanted to go to a doctor, there's not so much outrage. Second thing is that what you said about there's nothing wrong with you. I think it's actually really important to get there before there is something wrong with you. I mean, there's something wrong with all of us, let's be honest. But you don't have to wait till you like have a breakdown to see someone. It's what Tubo said. It's seeing someone out of your environment that is only focused on you for that moment. You may just be telling them about your week, you made anything, but it's release. And I haven't actually gone to a therapist. It's something I definitely have I'm looking into going to, because I think it's so important. And just to your last question about someone or how kind of coping, who you talk to when you're going through things, I think I had 2 mentors that really helped get me through lockdown, and I think for similar reasons, in the sense that they're removed from my general environment, and I don't really feel judged, just someone extra to confide in. And I'd say definitely, if you don't have a mentor, it's something that you should look into getting as well, because that was really helpful for me.
Great, thank you guys. And like someone just put in the comment box that we all need therapists. That's the truth. I mean, we say it all the time on Hangout Cafe. We all need therapist. And I think Pastor Jane just put here that a therapist is just a safe pair of hands and a container for processing your thoughts, which, like Tubo said, most parents are not even trained for that. But and then someone who's also objective, because as a parent, that's the truth. When a son or daughter comes and says, I'm going through this, immediately, and also sometimes we parents feel that, oh, is it something that I did wrong? What didn't I do right? Was it something I said? So it's good, guys. If they want to see a therapist, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with them. Like if I said, you don't want it to be for something to happen first before. Okay. Even the people that you reach out to when you're going through your deepest difficulties, is it what informs that choice? Is it safety? Is it absence of judgment, or the likelihood of an honest answer?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I'll start with that. I think for me, as someone who I think Tor can probably tell you, I'm not one who's particularly forthcoming. And I think I'm very grateful to have friends who are definitely proactive in reaching out to me. But I think for me, it's being able to have a candid conversation and knowing that you're actually going to have a conversation with someone who's going to listen to you, as opposed to judging you or providing their 2 pence. I think many times when sometimes you're going through something, all you want is to really speak to somebody, to have a safe pair of ears, to have someone you can trust and know that whatever I'm saying to them isn't going to be broadcasted on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. And so just having that safe space, I think, generally comes from your friends who you're quite close to, but friends who I can call them at any time and trust that they're going to listen and give me godly advice that comes from a place of love, as opposed to them just tooting their own horn.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I was just gonna say, just to add to that as well, I think especially with friends, I think sometimes, and I think the devil definitely does play tricks on your mind to think that you're the only one who possibly knows what you're going through. So I had a period in my life where my mental health was the lowest it's ever been. And I'm someone who talks a lot, but for some reason, I just thought everyone's gonna think I'm crazy. I can't say anything. And it was like I just became trapped in like inside my mind, and you think no one else knows what you're going through, and then the situation just exacerbates for that reason. But actually, a month or so ago, towards, you remember we had like a Zoom, we had a Zoom. It was supposed to be like a Zoom games night with like me, Tubo, and some of our other friends, and it just ended up being a therapy session. We were just on the call for like 2 hours. Everyone was just saying like what's been going on, and one thing, I found it very, very touching, because I was like, loads of people go through similar things. Like, it's very hard. Life in general is hard. The pandemic is hard. Yeah. Work is hard. Trying to navigate life as a young Christian Black woman, like, that's hard. Yeah. And it was quite amazing to hear in our friendship group how many people had started therapy. Some people had been going through things. Some people, like you said, just wanted a different way to process their thoughts. So I think also just being open with your friends about mental health. Like, if I said, if you broke your leg, your friend would your friend would help you. No one would say, how dare you wear crutches, walk in the name of Jesus. Like, no, I don't think anyone, some people I don't think anyone would say that to you. But being able to talk to your friends, and also it's not mutually exclusive with prayer as well. You can pray about your mental health while also seeking therapy, yeah, while also talking to your friends, yeah, while also acknowledging the fact that it's okay to not be okay, but also trusting God that you will be okay eventually. So yeah, that's just what I wanted to add.
Thank you so much.
I think I would add, just kind of to piggyback off what both of you have said. Yeah, I think it's really safety and feeling heard. I think often we think, and this is a note for parents and friends and like, I think we often think that we have to have the answers, but people don't really always need you to have the answers. They just want to know that, in fact, especially like, I think we often know what we need to do. We often know what the solutions are. It's just that we're struggling to do it. But we just want to know that someone cares enough to just hear us, to just sit with us, spend the time. You know, as Ayo said, like, we could have conversations. And one thing I know that he does when I'm sharing my stuff, he won't just immediately jump into, oh, bro, but you need to do this. He'll say, in fact, it's so funny. He'll go, And it's an amazing thing, because just that, like, those few seconds of, I can hear that he's processing it, means that I'm like, you know what, this person is actually taking what I'm saying. He's actually, you know, taking the time to not just give force solutions down my neck, because that's not what I need. All I need right now in that moment is, do I have a friend that can listen to me? So yeah.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think it's really amazing what you just said, someone that you know that Aisle is that friend for who's going to do that for you. And I think, not even to be cynical, but not every friend is for that reason. And I think it's really important that you go to a friend that's not going to make you feel worse. That's not just going to, like, I know you need some friends, their response would just be, let's go out, like, let's go out to do something. And that's not what I needed, you know, at that moment. And so I think it's really important, the older you get, to acknowledge that not every friend is for every situation, and to really, I guess, not be closed-minded, but just be more aware of who is there for you for those kind of things.
Yeah. Thank you. Wow. Great, guys. Okay, so also I now want to ask you guys, as an individual, where does your sense of value, worth, and purpose come from? Where do you get your sense of value, your sense of worth, and your sense of purpose from?
I feel like I know the answer, I should say.
I like that. I like that.
Especially after doing EMS, actually, with you, Auntie. So I feel like, you know, our value does come from God. We're here on this purpose as, you know, as vessels. Yeah. But I think it would be kind of, I mean, we're in the world, right? We're in society. Our value does come from things external to ourselves as well. Yeah. So I think that it's important to know who you are in Christ, firstly and primarily, because things that you put your value in, whether it's your work, whether it's your friends, these can change.
Yeah.
Like, you can lose your job in an instance. It doesn't mean your value suddenly disappears. Even people who you consider to be your best friends, one day they could wake up and say, do you know what? I'm just not feeling the friendship anymore. Same thing in relationships. So I think it's important that you always kind of need to know who you are in Christ, and that whatever your circumstances are, that value is like immutable. That's never going to change, no matter what your circumstances are. So, I mean, it's a continual process. Trying not to put your value in social media, in your clothes, in temporary things. But yeah. It's hard. It's a journey, but
the journey. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think I would yeah, as I kind of contemplated the question, I was just thinking, where does it really come from? You know, not what I think it should come from, but where does it really come from? And I'd say for me, my value, to be honest, a lot of it comes from my parents. You might be pleased to know, because the honest truth is, my parents have affirmed me in many different ways. You know, I think, you know, mum, if we're being honest, there have been times where I've presented a situation to you or whatever, and you've been quite bold in saying like, no, Tubo, that's not, you can't, you shouldn't care so much about what they think or what they say, or, you know. And I think, yeah, I think fundamentally when I go out into the world, it is those affirmations, it is that truth, or those words that have been said that kind of give me value. The other thing I would say is probably my friends. I think my friends do a lot of affirming for me. I think personally, I I think I'm not always confident in maybe who I am, or yeah, confident in who I am. So I think my friends do a lot of, Tubo, you're this, Tubo, you're that, you know, telling me the impact that my life has. But then I think kind of as what Afope was saying, the difficulty with the external, with your value coming externally is, you know, what happens if that friend is no longer your friend tomorrow, or what happens if they switch up?
Yeah.
So let's just pray that my friends stay there.
Well, okay. The next question I was going to ask you is, what informs your choices of friends? Because that's also very important. What informs your choices of friends?
This is going to sound very, very airy-fairy, but there are just some people that I don't know if it's like, I don't know what kind of spirit energy or whatever. I know that doesn't sound that Christian, but some people I'm just drawn to, and I can't even explain it. If you ask us why are we even friends, they couldn't tell you. And I think that's the initial kind of just drawing. And I think what keeps us as friends is when maybe we're able to get through something together. Or I think I really value sincerity and honesty, and someone that can actually tell me about myself, someone that is not just gonna let me walk all over them and then let it, because some people can't really, confrontation is a difficult thing, and if you've upset them, they won't be able to tell you, and then they'll just blow, and then you'll be like, where did this come from? And I think that for me, I can't really have friendships like that. I like you to be able to tell me, you know, if I've done something, and vice versa. So I'd say definitely honesty, and definitely us being mutual in how we deal with each other and how we grow with each other as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ben. Anyone else?
Yeah, for me, it's a really, really good question, and it's really made me think. I would start off by saying good vibes, and that means quite a lot, but I
I was going to
generally
say,
just,
what does that mean?
yeah, generally just like people who make me laugh, that I can spend time with. You know, I guess there's no bad energy. You know, you can just kind of be yourself around them. And that for me is one of the things that is the initial drawing. But I think what I guess ensures that the relationship is somewhat sustained, I think is a bunch of things like honesty, people who really do encourage you. I think particularly in a generation where I think our generation is very quick to cancel people. And so having friends that you know, okay, let's say I do mess up or I make a mistake, are these
Yeah.
friends going to be with me? And I think having that some sort of assuredness or showing some firmness in that with your friends, I think is
Yeah.
particularly important, particularly for our generation, because everyone's just so quick. Friendship turnovers are so quick, especially with social media and the culture we live in. I think it's just yeah, incredibly important to have people you know are going to ride the journey with you, what we call.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that I've been fortunate in that I have a lot of, actually in Jesus' house is where I made actually a lot of my like long-term friends, like, you know, Tubo and the gang. And I think one thing I love about our friendship is that it doesn't matter really how long we haven't spoken to each other. No one takes that as a slight. And we've always been close, but in lockdown, we would go for walks like all the time and we just talk. And friends that we can just be so silly together. We can laugh for like 5 hours and then someone will bring up something serious and then we'll delve into a deep discussion about something or the other. And then we might be, I don't know, just friends that are like friendships for me that are multifaceted. So I can laugh with you, I can cry with you, I can call you up. And yeah, not fair weather friendships, but I will also say that I think it's important that me personally, I kind of have different expectations for different levels of friendship. It's not everyone that I would expect to be like, I don't know, like, sorry, Tubo, I keep bringing you up. One of my oldest friends, so it's hard not to, like Tubo or Noni or Basola, for example, who I've known for pretty much my whole life. I can't really compare that friendship to someone I've known maybe for 3 years. So it's different expectations. But if I also mention that you have different friends for different reasons. So sometimes when you just need a friend to pick you up, you'll go to this friend. You can't necessarily expect them to be everything for you. That's why God blesses you with like a community, a village of people, and you can take what you need, not in a way that's like you're just taking advantage of people, but you can kind of, you create your like community, or sorry, your village, your village of people based on their different strengths. And I think that's one of the things that's quite beautiful about the fact that there's so many people on earth that you can essentially choose if they want to be your friends, to be in your life. I think friendship's a beautiful thing, not to be cheesy, but yeah.
Thank you, guys. Now, the next question I'm going to ask you is, are all your friends Christians? And if they're not, how do you practice your faith amongst your peers that are not Christians or don't even believe in God?
Oof, that is a very tough question. I think it's it's definitely something that I do need help with, to be completely honest. I think that I try to be myself with all of my friends, and that's and being Christian is part of who I am. But I definitely do notice areas where you might not know I'm a Christian, and I think one of my goals with faith is that people should know that I'm a Christian from how I act. You know, that there should be a distinction. If I'm around a group of non-Christians, there should be something different to me. And I think it's definitely something that I'm working hard with, and I try and, I remember at my last job, they'd be like, you know, what are you doing at the weekend? And I noticed that I wouldn't say church for the first few weeks because there's this, you know, loads of stereotypes. People they start to think you're crazy, that you're going to like start to just pray about them and all of this stuff. And I'm like, why is that? That's not something I should be embarrassed about, especially when we live in 2021 where everyone wants to force what they believe down your throat until it's Christianity. And so I think, it's a challenge, and it's something I'm trying to be more open about, be more visible about, and working on it. It's difficult.
Thank you for being honest about that, Ife. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'd say that I think I did a lot better at this in uni than I do in my adult life. I think when I was in uni, I remember kind of, you know, certain things my friends would be like, let's do this, and I'd be like, I don't want to do it. And I remember I had a very frank conversation with my housemate, and I'd be like, look, I'm a Christian, this isn't something I'm about doing. And I remember one of my friends being like, wow, I really respect a man who like stands for something. And that was quite refreshing to me, because I think we often, like if I said, that all these things that we assume they're going to think, you know, we think that they're gonna just think that, to be honest, they're gonna think we're boring, or we don't have fun, or any of those things. However, in my adult life, I've become a lot, I feel like I've been so much more tentative about saying things. I remember, like, with Pursuit of God, with fasting, um, I just wanted to avoid all these conversations. So I just go to my car and they'd be like, "Where have you been?" I just be like, "In my car," you know. Um, like, but it's even interesting because when the conversations were forced, when they did ask, "Why are you not eating?" or whatever, I remember one of my colleagues, she asked me, "Oh, she asked, like what, I didn't know Christians fasted. Like, what's that about?" And I explained all sorts of things about the flesh and the spirit. And even still, I was still nervous afterwards. But I think, I feel like I'm drifting away from the question. But yeah, it's a I feel like Christians, we need to learn to just be more
Bold.
bold about who we are, because the world is getting bolder and bolder about
Mm.
who they are, but
Yeah.
we're not,
Yeah.
which is odd. Yeah.
No, yeah.
Definitely.
I just to jump in there as well. I definitely agree. I mean, I have a lot of friends who aren't Christian, to be honest. Some who are different religions, and some who are actually actively don't believe in God. And I remember I have one of my friends who I met a couple of years back. He was one of these friends who was very like, there are people who they say they don't know, and then there are people who like, no, there is no God. Like, you cannot tell me there is. And we were having a conversation, and he said to me, "Oh, so I didn't realize you were a Christian. We were just talking about it." And he was like, "How?" He was like, "I don't understand. You're so smart. Like, how can you possibly believe that there's a God?" And I was just like, "God, like, help me. What do I even say?" And I actually just realized that this same friend, my birthday last year, just before lockdown,
Yeah.
we had gone out for my birthday, and he was talking to one of my friends at the party, and we were just talking about church, and we've actually got church tomorrow. He actually ended up coming to church.
Wow.
So he came to Jesus' house like on the Sunday after my party, and it's actually just now I remember that this was the same friend who a couple of years back was saying, "No, like, how can you believe?" And I sometimes I forget like how powerful God is. And it's not like I don't actually need to do much of the work. Like, even just me saying, "Oh yeah, I'm going to church," the Holy Spirit is clearly did something that led him, because I didn't really have to do much. And yeah, I literally just remembered now actually that just being open, like everyone was saying, just saying, "Oh, I'm going to church, I'm a Christian, I'm fasting." The more interested they become, then God can pretty much, and the Holy Spirit can do the rest of the work. So
Just
yeah,
sow the seed, and the Holy Spirit will do the rest. Absolutely. Yeah.
I just wanted to add one more thing on that. I think everything that everyone has said is so profound. And I think I'm actually reminded of, I guess, Christ himself. And I guess reading through the scriptures, I don't recall Jesus, going up to people and saying, "Hi, I'm Jesus. I'm a Christian. Hi, I'm Jesus. I'm a Christian. Hi, I'm Jesus. I'm a Christian." But I think what I recall is that many times it was their interactions with him that had a lasting impact. And going back to the point about seeds, I think one thing, especially with friends who aren't believers, is to, of course, make it known that we are believers, but also to act and conduct ourselves in a way where we always are showing love, where we're patient, where we're kind, so that regardless of where we might be, they always have this thought that so and so is different. There's just something about them. I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it, but they're always loving. They're always so kind. Even in the workplace, there are things where I might overhear one of my colleagues saying, "I really need, I don't know, some chewing gum," as small as it might be. And I'd go out to Tesco and buy the chewing gum for them without them asking. I think it's just being able to plant these seeds where they're able to see some distinction, and it's a good distinction. And I think many times those actions or those seeds that we plant when we don't even realize they're seeds actually are more impactful, because obviously as seeds generally they grow. And so our responsibility, I think, at times is to demonstrate the love of God, as generic as that might sound, but to generally demonstrate that love of God and allow God to do the rest in terms of planting the seed and ensuring or allowing the Holy Spirit to just do the work, where it's watering it, and cultivating that seed and that plant.
Fantastic. Well said, guys. Well said. Well said. Great. So, guys, how do you manage friendship with people and groups of people of the opposite sex? How do you manage friendships?
So I just laughed at the same time.
Oh,
Is that a difficult question?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm laughing so
I
much.
just I think it's such an interesting question. It's like I feel like it's always the question that gets us like, really invested. But I'll go. I think um I'm someone who's grown up with a lot of female friends. Like Afope knows, I've grown up with, I think, to be honest, in growing up in church, it was like the majority was just females, and then it was like one or two guys. Um, so I've always had a lot of female friends, and I've been very comfortable with those female friends. Um, Growing up, I think it's managing those relationships is interesting.
How?
I think you how I think it's interesting because you grow up and you learn the necessity of boundaries.
Okay.
You learn the necessity of what's appropriate or what's not.
Okay.
So I don't know. And then to be honest, you grow up and you encounter situations of feelings and all of that stuff. And I think, to be honest, I'm still learning. I'm still learning. I'm not. I think my boundaries are not fantastic at all. Because I'm just very comfortable with who I'm comfortable with, and if I'm comfortable with you, I'll treat you like, like I've known you like my whole life. Um, and I've learned that as time goes on, you actually have to put certain things in place, no matter how difficult or uncomfortable it may seem. And as you know, when you transition into getting into a relationship or whatever, I think you quickly realize where your boundaries aren't in place,
Yeah.
because there's suddenly certain things you're like, oh, but that's something I used to do, but I can't do it anymore. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have been doing this in the first place. And I think setting up the boundaries without the need to set out the boundaries is a really difficult thing.
Yeah. As you were talking, I was like, let me just listen, because I don't even think I've actively, set out a difference. But I think what you said about boundaries is really important. And I have quite a few guy friends. I don't really see them differently to my female friends, if I'm being honest. But until they enter a situation where, for example, maybe they are in a relationship, I definitely step back. I remember when my friend introduced his girlfriend to, we were at a party, like a dinner or something, and he kept going on about, university and like all the different things we used to do. And she wasn't a friend from university, and I had to be like, you're leaving, like she's feeling isolated, like you need to chill a bit. And I think, knowing that when situations change, you can't be doing all the things, even if they were innocent in the time, you need to be visibly different and set those boundaries up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. I'll be one. I will definitely hold my hands up and say I'm not the best at it. Someone might probably agree and tell you that as well. I'm still. It's definitely a work in progress. But about the topic of boundaries, one thing I remember actually was a friend of mine. We were having a conversation. I think someone might have been in that conversation, but a friend of mine said many times, if after you get into a relationship, you have to actively change the way you act with many of your friends, that many times those relationships there were blurred boundaries. And I think, as extreme as that sounded to me initially, I think I thought, and I asked myself, how many of your relationships do you have blurred boundaries, or are there no boundaries at all? And I think that was, the first point in time where I had to really think about, okay, whilst I feel as though this is normal, I don't think there's anything wrong with maybe speaking to my friend at this time of the day. You have to really think about how this might come across. And I think it's better to kind of set those boundaries and to prevent any heartache or problems, as opposed to responding after. Because I can tell you, for a fact that having to respond after is a lot harder than if you were to set those boundaries initially. So again, it's definitely for me work in progress. I'm learning, and yeah, we're just gonna have to see how it goes as we
it's funny that you guys said you're bad at it, because if you're bad, I'm definitely awful. To me, my guy friends and my girlfriends are like the same. I think maybe because I've had a lot of guy friends who are like, you know, my bros. So to me, I'm like, why would I suddenly change my behavior? Just like, why would I do that? And I think I realized we had a situation where, Tubo was there actually, and we were all hanging out as we do all the time, and our friend's girlfriend was there, and I only realized maybe like 3 hours in that she had left. She had gone somewhere else because she didn't feel comfortable.
Wow.
Because I mean, I think there were like two of us, 2 girls there, 3 girls, and then the rest guys. I think there's like 4 guys in the group.
Right.
And I didn't realize, and then it was only to the next day I had to apologize to my friend, like, what can we do? Especially, I would say, especially as if you're a woman who has close guy friends,
yeah,
when your close guy friends get a girlfriend,
yes,
you do need to make extra effort.
Absolutely.
Because the girlfriend's going to feel a type of way,
yeah,
to be honest.
Yeah.
She's going to feel a type of way. You do have to make an effort. So now I'm trying to actually become friends with the girl, like outside of my friendship with the guy, just to try and like make her feel more comfortable. Because even though I know it's innocent, like she might not know that. And opposite sex friendships, they do, like, externally they do look a type of way. There's always that, are they secretly attracted to each other? So you do kind of have to be a bit more, the word I'm gonna use is intentional. Even if you think it's innocent, you do kind of have to take a step back, forget about yourself, how you think, like, why would I change my friendship? It's my friendship. You have to do the work and be a bit more intentional, I'd say.
Yeah, and I think to take the other side of that, so Afope has said what the friends need to do, but I think for those in relationships as well, and I know for, like, in my experience, this isn't something I've done very well, but you do need to make the effort to bring your friends and whoever you're in a relationship with together, because, like, I think this was on Hangout last week, talking about like a mother-in-law and wife or whatever. And I think similarly with your friends and whoever you're in a relationship with, they've both known you, and like they have their own, I guess, desires for their time with you, and you know, their experiences with you, and each person wants you in that, if that makes sense. Like, each person, you know, your friends are saying, this is my friend. You know, your friends who have known you for however many years aren't going to just suddenly be like, oh, I have to implement all these boundaries now. It's not necessarily natural to them. But whoever you're in a relationship with also has to feel comfortable. So I think you have to do your best to bring them together, whether that's, you know, let's all hang out together. Let's all, just to make sure that whenever you do spend like time with the other, that each person feels that the relationship that they have with you is still solid.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Great. Okay. Let me ask. Let's now talk about, well, parents, so to speak. How do you manage being brought up in Britain by African parents, and how do you balance the 2 cultures and their respective value systems? I need to tell you guys this. Yesterday, I was having a conversation with Tubo, and he said something to me. He said, you sent me to Harrow School, but you sometimes raise me as a boy that went to a school in Nigeria. And I just found it so funny. So guys, how do you manage this? We brought about we African parents and the culture.
I think it's really interesting. I say we have a younger brother. He's 7 years younger than me, And I think he definitely has been raised in more of a British way, I'd say. My parents disagree. And I think it's interesting to see the kind of contrast there. So without saying too much, I think things that we might have not been able to do, like there's no question about it with Ianu. And I think that's probably just spending more time here. Also the gap, probably just tired, to be honest. But I think when I was younger, it was definitely interesting. I remember going to one of my friends, she's like half Indian, half white, and I kept calling her dad uncle, and I think he got really tired towards the end. But I just think that there's an element of respect that I think is quite important in the African culture. I'd say times where it differs, so I'm rambling a bit. I think the difficult thing, I think, is actually at times where maybe it's being portrayed as something that is, you do this because of God, or you do this because of church, but really it's more actually of a traditional thing than a thing that has been prescribed to by the Bible. And I think that is probably where the like tension comes in. But overall, I think I actually do really like being, British Nigerian. I think I kind of take the bits of the culture that I like from both sides, and I think it's been okay.
The best of both worlds.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Who wants to go next?
I don't mind going next. I think someone said in the comments culture clash, and that's literally how I would describe it. Like for me, it always felt like it was two different worlds, which is quite funny because my mum was born in the UK, so you might expect she would be more accustomed to the UK culture, but that's far from the case. So many times it was like I would go to school or I'd go to work, and of course I'm in the UK, I'm conducting myself as a British citizen, and I come back and I think sometimes it was just so different that at times it can be quite overwhelming. But I think as you get older, you kind of find a balance, and I think I've now come to appreciate. It's quite amazing that we have this merge and balance of cultures. I think it's incredible to be able to, I guess, relate with, the people that we relate with on a day-to-day basis, but also appreciate our culture. So I'm finding it a lot better. However, there have definitely been clashes, particularly with my parents, about certain things. I'm the kind of person that questions everything.
Sorry, can I ask, like what? Just give us an example.
So, for example, my dad, for example, I don't know, for some reason, he's never really been the kind of person that likes to go out late, for example. I don't know if that's a cultural thing or that's personal. And he's never really understood it. And so many times we're always going back and forth, and he's like, back where I'm from, like, you just come back at a certain time, you tell your parents how it is. I'm like, where exactly does this come from? Like, this doesn't always go back and forth. I'm just like, I don't understand what you're saying, because of course I've never grown up in that culture. So for me, it's out of this world when I hear some of these things, but I also have to recognize that this is where they've grown up. This is what they're used to. And so many times you have these conversations back and forth, which sometimes end amicably, other times not so amicably. But, as we get older, we're trying to, come to some sort of a resolution. So it's been interesting. That's the best way I would describe it. It's been fun nonetheless, I think.
Thank you. Tubo, are you okay? You keep coughing. Are you okay?
Yeah, no, I think I swallowed something the wrong way. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. So do you want to answer that?
Afope, go ahead.
Oh, you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. I just had to say, especially for parents who still have children in school, I will say it's hard enough in the UK being black or being foreign. You stand out. So sometimes I think parents maybe could be a bit more understanding that maybe coming to sports day wearing full traditional, you have jollof rice, you're screaming for example, I have two names. So in school I was always Rochelle, but I'm Afope as well. So I remember in school sometimes being terrified, like if I could just hear maybe my dad was in the courtyard picking me up from school, just, Afope! It's time to go, something like that. Like for me, that's like, it would give me genuine anxiety. And to be honest, now growing up, I'm a lot more comfortable, like everyone said, with both identities. But as a teenager, there's a lot of stuff going on. Like it's hard to stand out, is uncomfortable. So I think if you do want your kids to be proud of their culture and be able to say, you know, I'm going to bring jollof rice for lunch today, and someone says, what's that smell? You say, it's jollof rice, and you're proud of it. But I think that parents at home, you maybe need to kind of make your kids a bit more interested in the culture from their perspective, rather than just assuming because they're Nigerian, they're going to love the culture. Yeah. So whether it's you're taking them back to Nigeria regularly, you're teaching them Yoruba or Igbo or whatever language, or I don't know, just talking to them a bit more about the culture, because it's a bit of a shock when you're eating, I don't know, bangers and mash every day at school, and then it's a bit of a culture contrast. So I'd say parents could definitely be a bit more understanding with the fact that we are actually brought up here and school is hard enough. So yeah, I don't know.
So funny that you should say that, because I think that's where we differ a bit, because I mean, not to shame you, I went by Ife in school, and I think that's just naturally, I just really do I like food a lot, so I think that helped to kind of, not that Nigerian culture is just about food, but I think as a kind of initial entrance, it's quite easy if you're eating something good to be proud of your culture. And I think I remember at times in school where maybe like my dad would be there, or even you, Auntie Funke, and I think I'd be like, hi, and Afope might not be as open because she's thinking there's like a division. But I think naturally, like the year I had more Nigerian kids and etc. So I think because there's things that you can't control, as Afope said, it probably is best to like instill it, because it's not always going to be so natural for every child.
Yeah. And I remember your mom used to make jollof rice.
Yeah, it was good. Like, I liked it. I liked the people who would come in all trad. I loved it.
I remember what's it called? Speech day that we had at school one day. Yeah. Your mum had made her jollof rice, and I remember one of our friends, he was like, oh, I like this spicy rice. I will never forget that memory. But the thing I wanted to say was, I think parents should be aware that they're raising their children as Nigerians, well, or Africans, but they're going out and experiencing life as Brits. You know, when you're at school, they're not raising you as a Nigerian. And I think parents should just be aware of the tension that there is for their children. You know, all the people around you, all your friends, and yes, I know your parents might give you the example of, if they jump off a bridge, will you jump off a bridge? But all the people around you are, you know, maybe they're going to this party or they're doing this, and all of their parents are allowing them to do it. I'm not saying you have to do the exact same thing, but I think just being aware of the culture in which you are actually raising your child is very important, because for that child, if all of their parents are saying, yeah, you can go for a sleep, everyone else's parents are, you know, they're doing a sleepover, but your parents are just saying, no, you can't go, I don't know them, you know, I think that's that's the one that my parents have often, that's a distinct memory for me. I mean,
how do you get to know them?
How do you get to know them? I always used to say this to my parents. I'd say, you're asking me who these people's parents are. If you don't talk to them, how you ever know? So I just think it's just being aware of actually what it's like for your child, what it's like for them growing up, the tensions that they experience, and being sensitive to those, I think are really important.
Great. Ayo?
Yeah, I think pretty much everything you said. I have nothing much to add. I think I think now that we're older, I think it's better that we can have these conversations and be quite honest with each other, because again, it can be quite difficult, and there are definitely tensions there. So I think being able to just sit down and have the conversation, say, this is just how we do things. You may not understand it, but it's just how it works, and actually coming to have a conversation where we're trying to understand each other as opposed to throwing our ideas and cultures down each other's throats. I think it's something we could do more of, because I think it really cultivates an environment where we just generally feel a lot more comfortable, and it eases the tension for both sides, whether it be us and parents alike.
Yeah, I remember. Tubo, you
Sorry.
said something. You said you were going to mention this about us parents listening more and explaining the reasons why we don't want you guys to do so. Can you go over that?
I was literally just about to say that. I think the one thing that parents can do to just help their children, but also help them as parents, is to explain things, like actually explain why. If you're saying to your child that they should do this or they shouldn't do this, please explain why. I'll give an example of the other day. I was talking to my dad and we were going really back and forth about the whole not giving your parents something in their left hand. And I was saying to my dad, clearly this thing meant nothing because you don't instill it anymore. It's not something you say is mandatory, but when we were growing up, it was something that, if I didn't do it, you'd get upset with me. But for me, to be honest, I don't have a problem with the culture. I don't have a problem with all of these things. And, that's not something I plan to carry on. But anyway, it's just, I feel like if you explain things to your children, it just will help them so much. Because what happens is you don't explain things to your children and then they go out and in the pressure of the moment, in the pressure of with peer pressure or with temptation or whatever it is, your no isn't going to hold. Your don't do it is not going to be enough. I think I'll give a very candid example. I think my parents probably would have taught like things like smoking or whatever, probably would have been like, that's not something you should do. I don't even know if they said it, but I'm sure it was something that they frowned upon. But when I'm 15, 16 and everyone is doing it around me and they're offering, oh yeah, just have a cheeky drag.
What?
Like
Cheeky drag? What
just
Just
puff.
one puff.
One
Puff. It's not gonna hold. It's not gonna hold. But if your parents had taken the time to explain, actually, this is something you shouldn't do because of these might be the consequences, then I actually have a firm basis. And Mom, I was giving you the example of, I had a friend who he didn't drink because I think his dad had been an alcoholic, and so whenever drinks were going around, he had a firm reasoning as to why he would not get into that. But the problem is your children don't have firm reasonings as to why they won't do things because it wasn't ever explained to them.
Yeah. But one thing, I'm going to ask you guys a question about peer pressure, because this Tubo, when he was, I can't remember how old he was now, he went on a school trip. I know the school trips where you stay with families. He called me from France and he said, Mommy, they want to kill me. And I said, what do you mean? He said the father of the family, that he was smoking and that the smoke was going to kill him. Now here he is now saying at 14. He tried it. So I said to him, I said, so don't you remember then that smoking would kill you? But
just context, I was very young at this time. Okay. Very young.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Thank you guys. I mean, thank you so much, all of you, for being so candid about all of this. So let's take a question or two. Let's see. Okay. What are your views on dating? Do you date for dating or date with the intention of marriage?
Ooh, great question. So I think that everyone says dating to marry is that's what you should do, but they don't really go into what dating to marry really means. They don't go into the fact that you can date to marry badly. If I've met someone, he said hello, and I'm thinking, are you my husband? Straight off the back, that's already clouding the way I enter. Not that I date, if my dad is listening, but it's already clouding how I enter into the situation. It puts a lot of pressure on it.
Yeah.
On the flip side, dating every Tom, Tunde, and Harry is also not really what you should be doing. So I think that it's a conversation kind of thing, and I think if it helps when people who have gone before can come and be like, this is my experience, because it's literally like a stab in the dark. There's so much out there, a lot of good and a lot a lot of bad, and it'd be nice if you had those kind of things to, and like red flags to look out for, etc. But I think you can do both just as bad as the other. I don't think dating to marry is necessarily so much better than the opposite side.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Thank you. Anyone?
I'd say, oh, sorry, Afope. Go ahead.
Don't worry, you go ahead.
Ladies first. Ladies first.
Okay, I'll go ahead. I just had to say, just kind of link with the parents thing. In our culture, it seems like, you know, growing up, you don't talk about dating. You don't talk about it. I remember, sorry again, Dad, if you're listening, but my dad, I remember in school when I was 13, a boy called me my house number to say he was inviting me to his party. And there was no, the boy was just my friend. And my dad literally was like, must be your boyfriend, blah, blah, blah. Any boy who comes to my door, I'll be waiting for them at the door. And it was like, you just don't talk about it. But then when you get to a certain age, it's how your nails are dirty. How's your husband going to like that? And there's all this pressure of marriage that comes out of nowhere. And it's like, how did we go from boys don't exist to where's the husband? There's a big disconnect.
Yeah.
And I think that it would help a lot if parents started having candid conversations with their children about dating.
Yeah.
Because imagine, like me, for example, I'm 25 now, trying to find my husband, and I've never had a conversation, even talking to my parents about their relationship, just being open. How was it when you first started dating? How many people did you date? Did you ever date someone and you engaged and then that fell through? What was that like?
Yeah.
To be fair, my mum always says, you've got to date your friend. And I appreciate that advice from her, because it definitely does inform my situations, I would say. But yeah, I think that a lot more conversation needs to happen, because you can't go from boys, what was that, to bring me my husband, bring me my grandchildren. Yeah. It's like 0 to 100.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I think the dating for marriage, the dating just to date thing is a really difficult thing. I think the one thing I will definitely say, as Afope has kind of said, is that we don't, like, especially Christians, we do not talk about dating at all. No one tells you how to date at all, but they just expect you to somehow, like, get married. Like, it's literally, as I first said, it's like here to here, it's 0 to 100 so quickly. And I think we need people talking to us, actually saying what their experiences were like. Now with dating, I'll share my experience. I think yes, people should be dating with intentionality. I think you shouldn't just be dating for the sake of dating. I think you should be dating because you want to get somewhere. Yeah. But I will also say that my experience of just dating people has actually bettered me for more serious dating. Like my experiences of, like being with someone or being involved with someone, and then actually just like being like, no, this isn't right. Like, it's not going anywhere, or, this isn't the kind of person I want to be with, or this isn't what I like. It all has helped. So I think what I'm trying to say is, like, be intentional, but also, how do I say, don't be afraid. Yeah, don't be afraid. I think sometimes we can be like, I like this person, but I don't know if I'm gonna marry them, so I won't talk to them, or I won't go out on a date. I won't spend time with them because I gotta protect myself. And yes, protect your heart, but don't be afraid of the experiences that will ultimately help you down the line, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Thank you. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, this is an very, very interesting topic. One thing I've observed, actually, particularly in the church environment, is that particularly around our age, is you find there are a group of young people who are naive to the whole dating thing. And it's quite interesting because at our age, you would think, you know, they're somewhat used to it. But I think it speaks to the fact that really these conversations, as everyone has said, they have not been had earlier on. And I think it's also quite dangerous at times. Not to sound extreme, but I think the reason why they need to be had a lot earlier on is because one, it helps in terms of knowing what to look out for, knowing what not to look out for, knowing generally how to conduct yourself. We use this word all the time about dating intentionally. How do you expect us to date intentionally with marriage in mind if the first time it happens is at the age of 25? You've never done it before, and all of a sudden you're being told to date with intention to get married. And many times I've spoken to many of my friends, particularly female friends, who, like everyone has said, they go before uni, relationships was never a thing, and all of a sudden they come back from uni and it's where's your husband, where's your wife, and you're thinking, what does that even mean? Because I don't really understand what you're saying here. And I think it's so important to foster relationships where you have the conversations. I think even with parents, but also at church, because I think what we're doing is we're almost, I think in the same way we prepare, you know, children to go to university, to go to school, because we recognize the importance of that, or we prepare them for the working world. I don't think we do that with relationships. And I think relationships are so important because these are relationships, or this is a part of your life that has such an impact in the future that if you don't prepare now, what's going to happen is you're pretty much preparing them to almost fail the exam. Like there's no revision beforehand. And so I think we need to do better at helping them with the revision. That doesn't necessarily mean that every time they get into some sort of relationship is going to lead to marriage. But I think being able to have the conversation a lot earlier means they become more aware, means they become more knowledgeable. I think, without quoting the Bible too much, but it does say something along the lines of, "For my people perish for a lack of knowledge." And I think it's so true, because it's like, ultimately, if you lack the knowledge or understanding in anything, generally you're almost walking into something blindly. And so I think being able to have the frank conversations, I mean frank conversations, of course, relative to the age of your child, but being able to have those conversations where, you know, you're able to just kind of be honest with each other, I think it just helps. And I think it means that it's a lot more comfortable for parents as well, because you can say to your parents, "Hey, I'm speaking to somebody, this is where my head's at, can you just give me some advice about this?" Your parents, as opposed to saying, "Why are you dating so and so? What do you think you're doing?" Maybe a good response might be to offer some advice and to say, "Hey, I think you should do this. This is what I did." And I think having those relationships where you foster that open communication is better for both of you. That way, when, let's say, we bring someone home, you're not surprised or you're not taken aback, and it doesn't now cause a big hoo-ha because everyone's on a different page. So I think in order to make sure we're on the same page, and in order to ensure we're all prepared, conversations need to be had both at home, but equally in the church as well.
And just to jump on the back of what you just said there, Ayo, if you don't have those conversations with your children, it's not that they'll stop being involved with people. It's not that they'll stop having relationships. They'll just be doing it in private. And the last thing you want is your child to come home one day and say, "Mom, I'm getting married." And it's like, what, you've been in a relationship for 2-3 years and I didn't know? So it's so much better that they're doing these things with your knowledge.
Sorry, I just really have to echo that. And even not just for relationships, but other things, like, for example, university, they're going to be, there's lots of peer pressure. There's the pressure to have sex. There's the pressure to drink. There's the pressure to do all sorts of things which you wouldn't have, like, and your parents aren't there. So I think that, like Tubo said, it's not like they're just going to suddenly stop doing this because you don't have those conversations with them. And I think sometimes parents are afraid to be friends with their children because they think their kids are just going to become, like, I don't know, like runaways or something. They think their kids are just going to go off the rails. But actually, I think you having a conversation with your kid, with your child about these things, being open and frank, it showed, to me anyway, it shows that you respect them. You respect their opinion about certain things. Of course, you still need to have that parent-child respect, but you'd much rather your kid, your child make a mistake and you know about it, rather than they go out there, do something crazy, and they're afraid to come to you. I feel like the circumstances could be way worse, rather than, it's better that they do things within the confinement of your home than go out there, go to uni and make wrong choices. And because it's true, there's a lot of peer pressure. Uni is to be frank with all you parents, is a uni is, especially now, it's a crazy place. It's crazy. I mean, I'm sure you guys all know what I'm talking about. It's crazy. People who you would have never ever thought of meeting, but if you don't have that grounding from home, that preparation, like Ayo said, you're gonna fail the exam every single time. Like every single time.
And just to echo again, let's be honest, you can't actually stop many things from happening. You can kind of do your best as a parent, even as we're talking about being friends with your child or going the opposite route. You can't stop what they're going to do when you're not there, but all you can do is kind of do your best and hope for the best. And I think it's much better to kind of go down the friend route and understand that, look, I can't control every aspect of your life. You're going to make mistakes. Even if I've done the best, read all the parenting books and I've applied it, you're gonna make mistakes, just like I'm gonna make mistakes as a parent. But you can just do your best, and there comes a time where you just have to let go
and let God.
I guess I think, thinking about it, I think maybe we parents, we're probably just afraid. And, you know, we're thinking, I don't want him to make mistakes because we've made mistakes. I don't want, but we're doing it the wrong way. We're going about it the wrong way. I think that's what I think.
They have to make mistakes. Like, that's how they look.
I know.
I'm thinking of how honest I should be with my life here, because I know there's a lot of, but I'll share. I remember when I was about 16 years old, and someone might be like, what? When I was 16, I remember I went to a house party, and, you know, everyone was drinking, people were smoking, and all sorts. And my mom will remember. And I remember I was drinking, I had some weed, and I had a terrible experience. I had a bad trip. I thought I was gonna die. Like, genuinely, it was the most terrifying experience I've ever had in my life. And I genuinely, it's that experience that meant that I wouldn't do it again. So, you know, I think there's a lot of course my mom might be like, that was terrible, but you go through these experiences and they are what make you in the future. They are what build you. They build your character. If your child is protected from all of these things, if your child will go to uni eventually, and the last thing you want them to do is get a taste of all these things for the first time at the age of 18, and they're just going crazy and they're off the rails. And I was just gonna give a tip to some parents that, you know, maybe it's that you don't want your child to go clubbing or to do all of these things. The best thing that you can do is go and drop them off at the club and pick them up from the club. Be that parent. You know, your child wants to have a sleepover. Be the parent that your children have the sleepover at. That they, you know, if they want to have a house party, let it be at your house and you control the environment. Because the worst thing, and I'll tell my mom very candidly, as she knows, there are times that I'd say I'm going off to Kemdi's house, but really we're going elsewhere. But, you know, because I knew
now I know.
I can say these things like now, you know, I don't, you know, but yeah, I think it's so much better that you know, and yeah.
I remember that day he came home and he thought he was going to die. You know, he was hallucinating, but he didn't tell us then that he had the weed. He just said, I don't know, I'm just feeling, oh, God. Did you even say we should call the doctor? I can't remember.
We actually went to that night before I went.
You went to the doctor?
Yeah,
Oh, sorry. So I just really quickly, I just wanted to say, just off the back of what Tubo said, for example, what you said about you being the place where they have house parties and stuff. My mum, and again, sorry, mum, for saying this, but actually some of the first times I've ever tried alcohol was with my mum, to be honest. And it meant that we had already kind of tried it at home, so it wasn't so crazy. And when I went to uni and everyone was drinking vodka and the hard spirits and they'd pass out, and you know, just I'm not saying that I didn't have those experiences at uni, to be honest, but I was able to actually call my mom. I remember I called my mom once and I said, "Oh, mom, like I tried vodka, like I really didn't like it. I'm not gonna drink it again. I have a pounding headache." And me actually being able to call her meant, to be honest, I didn't actually really drink vodka at uni, to be honest, because I'd already tried alcohol a bit at home with my mum, went to uni, had a bad experience, like Tubo said, and then I was able to call her. And in her head, she might have been thinking, "Oh gosh, what have I done? My kid is talking to me about vodka." But actually, she probably didn't realize that the fact that I could go to her meant that I genuinely wasn't really going to do that again. And to be honest, she'll even say I don't really, I don't even really drink that much, to be honest. So,
you know, I forgot what you said is so true. I remember when we were growing up, even from maybe when I was 3 or 4, my grandma used to give us what we call shinap then. I think it was called shinap or something like that, alcoholic drink, you know, in a small cup. She used to give us to taste. That was my first taste. But then I grew up with my father worked in the brewery, so we always had alcohol at home. And just like you, when I went to uni, I did go crazy because it was something that we did at home. So that's I'm not saying parents should be grieved because some people will say, but some because they'll be giving your children alcohol. But it's just that, I mean, Afope has a very valid point. You know, talk to your children, try things with them at home so that they know that it's not a big deal. Because sometimes when you go to uni, that's when it's now a big deal. And then your friends put you under a lot of pressure. So thank you so much, you guys. Wow. Yeah, go on.
Two quick points. I think, like, just following off of what we just said. One is that the mistakes are inevitable. They're going to happen. And so parents control that. They're going to happen regardless of what you do. You might put all the precautions in place, but there's still going to be something that's going to happen. So that's one thing. And then secondly, one thing I always want to tell parents as well right now is to trust the work you've done. I think many times they've brought us up in a really good way, and then for some reason they just fear that something's going to happen. So I would say to all the parents is trust the work you've done, trust your parenting. You've done the work for 18 years or so. Your child goes off to university. Trust that everything you've said to them, they're going to listen. And obviously, as we are people of faith as well, there's an element of prayer. So you know that even if they were going to do something, you're praying and you're trusting that they're going to come back. So I think one thing I always say is to definitely trust your parents and trust the work that you've done for said number of years.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you, guys. Wow, I did say we're going to finish at 1:30, but can we go on for an extra 15 minutes or 10 minutes, please, if you guys don't. And I think we're going to have a part 2, guys. I'm sorry, but we're going to have a part 2 because there's so many questions that have come in. And on another note, someone who's just offered, Bumi, she does a lot of relationship stuff, and she's offered to help anyone who is interested in dating or to discuss this issue of dating. So I think what we might do is arrange a Zoom thing for you young guys. So if you guys want to invite your friends, in fact, I think we'll probably do something with Bumi, Lanre, where you guys talk about all this relationship things. Is that what do you guys think?
Yeah, that would be great.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, it's fantastic. Okay, we'll sort that out soon. Whoa. Right, the next question. Do you think it's possible today for a young person to aspire to the godly dictates of purity and celibacy? Now, I found out a few days ago that for you guys, there's a huge difference between purity and celibacy. Can you guys explain?
I'll say, to be very honest, I don't think we were taught purity. I think we were taught celibacy. We were taught don't have sex before marriage, but we weren't taught why. And that's a big problem. And the problem with that is even if we're able to be celibate, we're not keeping our hearts pure. So I think it's partly or largely in what we've been taught.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be frank, completely frank, I think when you say things like don't have sex before marriage without the explanation, you can find a lot of loopholes in that phrase. There's a lot of ways to do things but you're still not having sex, right? And I think what Tubo said about being pure, you're probably not being pure in that state either, but because it's kind of like a don't do this, you're ticking that box without ticking so many other boxes. And like everything you said, it's all in the conversation, it's all in the understanding why, and not really prescribing you not to do this, but saying this is where it stems from and leaving you to kind of make your own decisions with that.
Wow. Yeah, I have to agree, actually. And yeah, to be frank as everyone's being, I remember growing up in Jesus' house, particularly when we were teenagers, and a lot of the youth pastors would just say, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. And actually thinking back, a lot of the people who I was friends with in Jesus' house, they've left. They've gone out into the world. I don't even know necessarily if they're Christians anymore or whatever. You know, as it happens, to be honest, as you go to uni, maybe your faith isn't as strong. But saying don't do this, don't do that, and not explaining why, it's just judgmental. So when it does happen and they go and do these things, even if it's like, so you've gone to uni maybe and they've ended up having sex, they now feel like they're so far removed from Christianity. God hates them. Like, God doesn't want anything to do with you. And because they don't understand that, they just know the rule and they don't know the explanation behind the rule and the reason why God wants us to keep our hearts pure and to not lust and all those things. They're thinking, I've done this, I'm just not a good person. And that's not, to me anyway, what Christianity is about. It's not necessarily just about the judgment. It's understanding that we sin, but because of the blood of Jesus, we can be, for God's already forgiven all of our sins. He knows what we're going to do next week, to be honest. But I think, to be completely honest, I'd say that there was a lot of teachings, I'd say, in church, which we were just told, don't do this, don't do that. You can't even, for example, you can't be friends with gay people, for example. Like, that homosexuality is a sin. But realistically, in university and work, you're gonna be around, you could have a boss. You can't not talk to your boss because you don't agree with him. And Pastor Badge, I would say, and one teaching that stuck with me, he'd always say, like, hate the sin, not the sinner. And I think that's really important, and that's kind of the atmosphere that needs to be kind of fostered more in church, especially for young people, because you don't want young people to just leave the church and feel like they have no home, they can't come back. And I think it's very dangerous, to be honest. I think a lot more needs to be done to kind of to explain why things are the way they are. So you, as a person, you know why you're doing something, you know why you're grounded. You're not just told, don't do this, don't do that, and then you do it and you feel like, oh, I failed, I might as well go all out. And
thank you so much for that. And you know, one of the questions I was going to ask you was about people living, young adults rather, leaving church. And why do you think that is? But I think this is also part of, but does anyone want to speak about that?
So I have a kind of a personal, I guess, example. One of my kind of best friends, like, you know, that friend that whenever you're going through something with your faith, etc., like, this is the friend I'd go to for that. And I think recently she's told me she took like a 1 year like break from religion. I think she's still on that. And what led her to do that was actually her mental health. And she found that a lot of it was she was trying to kind of self-medicate, I guess, with like the Bible, kind of trying to pray it away because that's what she felt that she should do as a Christian. And so she wasn't like going to get the medical help that she needed. And so now she's done that, but she's kind of shut God away. And I think the reason why she thinks that she can't do the two is it must have been because of how she was introduced to God and what she learned about God. Because when I spoke to her, I was like, I didn't even know you felt that way, because I felt like we always had, you know, open relationships. And I think you underestimate the effect that you can have on your children, or even if it's not a child, if you're a youth pastor or youth leader, the effect that you can have on a young child, and how they can just take something and run with it. Because now she's like, she thinks that they're, you know, antithesis. She thinks that you can't pray to God about your mental health and seek medical help. And that's not the case. And so I think a lot of it is in the foundations that are built. And that's just one example I have.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Anyone still talking?
Sorry.
Yeah, go on.
I would say 2 points. So to the point we were talking about before, one of the dangers of not having communication or not communicating is that our roots become weak. And by that, I'm just using the analogy of a plant. And ultimately, when the temptation does come, if our roots aren't deep, if we haven't had the conversations, if we don't really understand why we're supposed to do what we're doing, we have nothing to hold on to. And so what you find is that many times, yes, you might have been brought up in a church and you've been told, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. And it comes where you're faced with that, and the temptation is there, but you also don't actually have anything to hold on to. All you're holding on to is don't do it. But why? And in that moment, I feel like it's somewhat too late, because the roots have not been built. And so I think what having conversations like this does is it ensures that the roots are deep and they're strong. Then to the point about, you know, why I think many believers or Christians or young people are leaving the church, I think it's because we've created an unattainable standard. I think, again, an unattainable standard. In that we've been taught to, of course, aspire to be like Christ, which of course is everyone's goal. But I think in the way it's been done has been quite, it's been quite hard, because it almost creates an environment where young people feel as though if I miss the mark in this small area, or if I miss the mark in this area, maybe I'm struggling with this, I've failed completely. And I think that's literally the complete opposite of what this faith is about. I think this faith is really about, you know, while you're yet sinners, God still loves you. Even in your struggle, he still loves you. And I think if that message was perpetuated, that message was what we heard over and over again, even when we fall short, we're more inclined to come back and say, hey, I've messed up, but I trust that there's still love there. Whereas I think the story or the narrative that we've heard for many, many years is that this is the standard, and if you don't reach this standard, then you failed. And I think the reality is nobody reaches that standard. And so even as parents, if you're even able to have conversations, frank conversations, where you're saying, I've fallen short in these areas, I think it actually humanizes our parents, but it also humanizes our aunties and our uncles and our pastors, because it makes us feel as though, hey, they're human. And one of the things I really appreciate about Pastor Agu is he's very candid and open about about his past and some of his struggles. And so I see him as a human being, whereas other people, I think, you know, they come across as high and mighty. And so you almost feel as though this person is so withdrawn and is so pretty much a non-human, that if I fall short in any way or any capacity, that I almost feel like I cannot have a conversation with them. And ultimately, what we need to do, I feel like we need to do in the church, is to accept and normalize mistakes and shortcomings, because they are normal, and ultimately create an environment where anybody feels comfortable to say, hey, I hold my hand up, I've fallen short, I need help. Does God still love me? Yes. Do I need to do better? Yes, but there's a process to that, and we don't necessarily have to be like Christ yesterday.
Wow.
Just to add on that, because I think it's interesting that the last question was, you know, focusing on sexual purity. I think there are kind of these sins that we put on a level that are like the sins you should never do, and it's homosexuality and sex. And, you know, you may add drugs on a good day, but it tends to be like those two. You can sin giving someone a side eye. You can sin gossiping. No one's like has conversations, should Christians lie? Do you know what I mean? Because there's a lot of white lies we tell on the daily. If you're doing a surprise party for someone, you're going to have to lie. And I think that is the thing. In our flesh, it's natural to sin. And I think when we zoom in on those particular sins, and it's like those are the only ones we really talk about addressing, and you let go of so many of the everyday sins that we do, because when you're transformed in every single part of you, and it's only God that can do that. And so I think when we focus so much on these do's and don'ts, you just lose completely the relationship aspect of it, and that is the bit that's going to transform you. And so I think it's that as well.
I actually remember in church one time there was there was the leader. He always would say, I know where I'm going. What about you guys? How many of you guys here today can say you're going to heaven? And I just remember thinking, like, I am the worst person on earth. Like, genuinely, if I've done something, I lied yesterday, I did this, I did that. And he used to say this all the time. Like if I said, it was always it's homosexuality or you know, all these sorts of things like that are so bad, and if you do. And the problem is that when you keep the good thing about being saved is that we cannot earn it. Like, it's just given to us. Jesus has already died on the cross for our sins. So you constantly saying to young kids who are dealing with peer pressure, I know where I'm going, where are you going? It's unrealistic. And I just had to add that in. You just need to be realistic about the world that we're living in and equip young people, especially with the tools, rather than make them feel as though their salvation is conditional, because it's unconditional. Like, God loves us unconditionally, irrespective of our shortcomings and failures. So I think definitely a lot more needs to be done there, especially for young children growing up in the church.
Wow.
And I think I would just add that I think I love what Ayo said about that standard, because it's so true. I think the people are coming into the young people are coming into the church, and I think they see that they're not. I think you want to feel accepted, right? You want to feel accepted just as you are, and I think that's a huge thing for young people. They want to feel that they don't have to meet this standard. They want to feel that if they make this mistake, it doesn't mean anything. And I think as a church, we really, as the body of Christ in churches all over, we really need to actually think about what the main message that we're preaching to young people. And for me, that message should be, God loves you just as you are. God loves you regardless. Like, I feel like we even skip over. I feel like we say, you're saved now, great, fantastic, let's go into being a warrior for Christ. Like, but we skip, like, we don't realize that people's foundations are not really being built, and so quickly they're like Ayo said, have to meet a standard. So quickly they have to look this way, dress this way. And I don't even think how, you know, a lot of us in church, we might say, oh, you know, there's no one has to be anyway. But I think we should look around. If we actually look around, everyone looks exactly the same. Everyone dresses exactly the same. You know, you go to church, everyone is wearing their Sunday's best. So what does the person that doesn't know Christ, doesn't know church wear, coming in their tracksuit feel like? They feel like this is too much. They feel like, what is the person that hears a message and they hear, oh, everyone knows this scripture? They're talking about this scripture as if it's common. I don't know it. You know, everyone knows which songs to sing. How, like, I don't know. And I think, I'm sure every young person here can say that they've gone to Hillsong at some point in their life. And I think what you'll find at a church like there is, and I know it's a common example that we give, but you walk in, people feel genuinely happy to see you. You feel accepted just as you are. You see people who look just like you. And again, we have to remember that people are coming from the world. They're not coming from the same place as you. They're coming dressed in their ripped jeans or whatever it is, their leather pants, whatever it may be. They're coming, you know, the pastor or whoever it is saying, hey, we don't know where you're coming from, but we're so happy that you came to join us today. You know, you may not know the lyrics, but just sing along with us. And these are all just things that, like, make people feel like, oh, you know what, this is somewhere I feel welcome. You know, I know some people may say that the messages at Hillsong may be a bit too basic or whatever, but people need their foundations built. They don't want to feel like a 10-year Christian or whatever after 10 days. And sorry, I'm going on a bit because this is something that is really
No, it's fine. It's fine. You guys, I mean, seriously, I'm learning, and I'm sure every other person on the session we're all learning from you guys. And this, thank you guys for keeping it so real. We really do appreciate it. And we really want to learn. We want to know how we can be better, what we can do. And I almost feel like we need to have a parenting session where you guys come and say, this is how you talk to the children. But seriously, yes, I go on.
I want to say one thing, and it's just a really short line, but I think it pretty much summarizes everything we've said. And I think it's that if we love first, the fruits will follow. Because I think many times we're expecting the fruits to come before we love. And I think if we actually flip that order, what we'll start to see, and I think like Tubo mentioned with Hillsong, is they love first. The first thing, as soon as you enter, you feel the love. I think it's the love, like we saw even in scriptures, it's the love of God, the realization, the awareness of his love that actually brings us into this new being, into change. And so, again, I think if we love first as a people, as parents, as the church, as a body in Christ, what we'll see is that the fruits will just follow after.
Wow. Oh, God, I think we need to stop now. No, seriously. I think we should stop, but I'll just end with just one last question and then that's it. But we'll definitely have a part 2 because there's so many questions that we haven't even covered. But I'll end with this one. So lastly, each generation is tasked with the challenge of building on or correcting what their predecessors have done. What issues do you feel that your generations will have to address if you're tasked with building or correcting what we didn't do or did, building on?
One thing that I think I'm quite, I guess, passionate about is like race relations, as a lot of our generation is. And I do feel as though, just to take like my parents for an example, my mom, growing up in Nigeria, everyone around you looks the same. So moving here, and then I guess I'm grown up here, so having to deal with like racism as well growing up, and being told that kind of like it's normal. I think that, you know, seeing the generation that's even coming under us, Gen Zs, they're a lot more vocal about this stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to like kind of talk to your kids about these things, like feminism and race relations and equality and discrimination, because it's like these things are very important and it's part of your identity. Not accepting that, you know, for example, we're always told we're Black, we have to work twice as hard, but like why is that? Why is it something that we have to accept? We don't need to necessarily just kind of adjust to the status quo. As everyone's seen in this past year, things are really being uprooted. So I think that is really important to instill those kind of values in your kids from a young age. That it is good to be vocal about it and to stand up to injustice. And you know, we are Christians and we should love everyone, but I think it's important to be able to be vocal about these things and not feel like we're being too political. Oh, Christians shouldn't really be political, because racism is something that is pervasive in our society. Same with sexism, with other forms of class inequality. These things do affect us on a tangible level and on an emotional level. So it's important, I think, that to kind of instill those values in your children.
Thank you.
I think for me, I'd say the world is changing at such a fast rate. Like it does scare me, to be honest. I think there's so much more that you need to be equipped with. But I'll just go from a career perspective, that there are so many jobs out there, new jobs. You can be a TikTok star and literally make more money than I do on my day to day. And I think that encouraging your kids to just, you know, try everything out. It's being a creative. It's hard, and there's less security around it, but I think the pandemic has shown that there's less security around jobs in general. You can be an accountant and get fired and then bam, you know what I mean? So I think when you're in a position where you're doing what you're passionate about, it's a lot easier to get through those periods of uncertainty when you know this is what you're supposed to be doing. And that starts from, you know, young, when you're choosing your GCSEs, when you're choosing your A-levels. I think it is improving, and I think when I look at the variety of what my friends do, it's a lot more. We've come a long way from the whole lawyer, doctor, engineer kind of thing. And I'd just say to continue to encourage your kids to really go for what they want. And as much as it's hard, to just let them know that you're not going to resent them if they choose to be a YouTuber. That, you know, you can support them there as well.
Great. Thank you, Faye. Thank you.
I would say kind of communication, asking questions / friendship with your children.
Okay.
I'd say that's the biggest thing. I think it will just transform the dynamic of parenting and relations with your children, but also how they grow up. Your children, my generation is so much more curious, I think, is so much less accepting of the status quo. I think we are not just saying yes, ma, like I'll do that. Like we're not. That's not our generation at all. And no matter how much you may want it to be, it's not how we are. And I think just embracing the questions that your children have, embracing the why, and actually taking the time to explain things if you don't understand. Because let's be honest, and the one thing I have to say is I can't blame a lot of parents, because they didn't choose to, like, a lot of the things that they know they didn't necessarily choose. It's just how they were brought up.
Yeah.
But if you don't understand something yourself, if you don't know it, taking the time yourself to say, you know what, I'm going to think about this, I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
And kind of, this may, I don't know, people may, whatever, but actually respecting your children, I think is really important. Like actually respect them. And I think we're always like, yeah, my child should respect me, my child should, but actually respect them. Like your child is someone who has had their own experiences, who has gone through life as they've gone through it. They're taking in lots of different things, you know. They actually might know more than you in many different areas.
Yeah.
But like actually respect them by interacting with them, respect them by giving them the time to say how they feel, to explain their point of view.
Yeah.
I just think, that can just change a lot.
Thank you. Ayo. Ayo, last word.
Yeah, the one they've pretty much taken all my points. So the one that comes is to, I think, allow our generation and I guess our children to be individuals. I think what I mean by that is, I think many of our parents, some of them who have come from Nigeria, have almost had to be a certain way in order to get through and to be where they are right now. But I think we're at a point now where we can allow our children, we can be individuals where we have our own thought patterns, we are different, we can, I guess, assimilate into the working environment, but still be ourselves. And I think for many of our parents, quite difficult, because I think they've almost been conditioned or taught to see, to think that in order to be successful, you have to do this, you have to follow this path. But recognizing and understanding that there are so many paths, and ultimately allowing your child to kind of be who they want to be, to embrace their individuality, as woke as that might sound, but ultimately to just encourage them to be who they want to be, to do what they want to do, I think is something we definitely need to do. And I think it's a privilege, and I think we appreciate what our parents have done in ultimately paving the way for us to enable us to actually be at a point where we can do what we want to do. Like we can decide one day that we want to change career paths today, or we might want to travel abroad for 6 months or for a year. We have that opportunity. And so whilst we really appreciate it, I think our parents need to do more to kind of let us be ourselves, be individuals, let us enjoy life, and ultimately let us be who we've been called to be, or who we really are.
Yeah. Guys, I really need to say this to you guys. I love you guys so much from the bottom of my heart. You guys have been so frank, so open. I love your boldness, your courage. I really love you guys. Thank you so much. And parents, we're not knocking you. In fact, first of all, to your parents, Ayo's mom and dad, Afope and Ife's mom and dad, well done. And well, to me too. No, you guys, no, seriously, your parents have done so well. You've done so well. Of course, we made mistakes, but we are learning, and that's part of why we have you guys here today. And we're definitely coming back for part 2. We're definitely going to have the Zoom session with Uncle Larry and Auntie Bumi. And please, I really hope that parents, aunties, uncles, you get your kids on. I know some parents said they would love to join. I'm not sure if we allow parents to join. I think it should be just for the young adults. But thank you. And guys, can we really show them some more love, some hugs, just to let them know that we appreciate them. They've been amazing. Really, truly amazing. God bless you. And you know, I pray that God will continue to increase you in wisdom. He'll give you understanding. And you guys are a blessing to your generation. And I know that God is going to use you tremendously. God bless you guys. Thank you so, so much. Thank you, guys. Love you lots.
Love you,
Auntie.
Thank you.
And thanks to all the parents out there. We know that we've made mistakes as well. We're not coming from this self-righteous place, but yes, we can continue to talk and learn from each other.
Yeah, we'll have conversation. Maybe that's another. In fact, I can see us doing so many things where the parents are and the young adults are having conversations where we can ask each other, almost like sitting opposite the face. So, what do you think? How should I do this? But parents, a lot of the things that have been said today is about communicating with your children, and in a manner where we're respectful, respect their points, we respect that they're individuals, they're unique, and yeah. Thank you, guys. Next week, we're having Pastor Jane will be with us next week. And actually, I forgot about that. Yeah, she's going to be helping us parents learn more about, she talks a lot about relearning. So we have to relearn our parenting styles. She's going to help us do that next week and talk about some other stuff. So thank you, guys, and see you next week. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Auntie. God bless.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you.